Hey, thank you for joining me again at What You Missed in Genesis. This will be let me turn my phone off. This will be lesson number 7, and we're actually starting a new chapter. Woohoo! It took us 6 lessons to get through chapter 1, so we're going to move a little bit faster. So if you were feeling like you were bogged down, we're going to zip through these a little bit faster. So it begins with chapter 2. And actually, even though this is the next chapter, this is a continuation of that creation story. Um, so, anyway, of course, when it was originally written, it didn't have verses and chapter divisions and stuff. That was placed in a long time ago later. Um, I think by a bunch of monks that were trying to make it easier for us to make reference points. And if I was a monk back then, I would have probably started chapter 2 after the first 3 verses of chapter 2. But um, nonetheless, that's just my thoughts. Who am I to judge a monk? So, anyway, seventh day. So, we're going to look at the seventh day of creation, and it's a continuation, I said, of the story in chapter 1. So, it begins with verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished the work, uh, his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done, so that God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. All right. So why is God taking a nap? Why is he getting middle-aged like me and needing naps more frequently? No, God is in no need of naps. God does not sleep, and the psalmist says, nor does he slumber. Um, though interesting to note, the other gods in the ancient Near East do sleep, and Elijah will make fun of them when he contests the god of Baal or Baal, however you want to pronounce it, um, during the Mount Carmel contest. Anyway, back to the seventh day rest. So God rests. What that means is it's not that he's tired, but it means that he is ruling and reigning as a king who had finished order and creating order in the cosmos and having it all furnished and set up. Now he rests. So it's the idea of things are completed, things are accomplished, and now he rules and reigns. So he rests over his creation. If you note this, it's a little strange. So when each of the days of creation are finished, pay attention to the end statement, because it'll say, um, for example, let me just quote it so I don't have to quote it incorrectly by trying to remember it. Like verse 5 of chapter 1. And so there was evening and morning the first day. And then verse 8, and there was evening and morning the second day. And then on the third day, it says in verse 13, and there was evening and morning the third day. Okay, so you got my thing. So it says it does that, repeats every time in the evening, morning, first day, evening, morning, second day, evening, morning, third day, evening, morning, fourth day, evening, morning, fifth day, evening, morning, sixth day. But when it gets to the seventh day, it never says, and it was evening and morning the seventh day. That should make you curious. Why did that day not have that kind of conclusion? And many of the Hebrew scholars are keen to note that the reason why there's no evening and morning the seventh day is because the seventh day does not end. So yeah, swallow that for a minute. So in other words, it's communicating to us that God's rule and reign does not end. And the writer of Hebrews will make reference to this in Hebrews chapter 4, verses 1 through 11, that we are to enter that rest. It is our goal to enter that rest, so that God is resting, and it remains yet a Sabbath rest for the people of God, and we have yet to rest in it, and we are to I don't know if it says to strive, but we are to find that rest in Him. So the whole idea is that we are to rule and reign with Him, and to rest, meaning to trust God. Just, when you're in a place of trusting God, man, you just rest. You can relax because you've put your trust in Him. It's not only do we have this working relationship with God where we are ruling and reigning with Him and trying to bless the world, but we're also just where was I going with this? But we're also trusting Him. That's where I was going. We're also trusting Him. So it's a personal relationship of us just trusting Him. So the seventh day, all these things, the Jewish calendar is based on a lunar cycle. So that's why it's 7, because there are seven days in the lunar cycle. So that creates the week. And that's the way a lot of cultures do. But specifically that we're looking at is the Jewish culture. So things are all mainly based on a lunar cycle. So when you think of the number 7, a lot of times people will say, well, that number is symbolic of perfection. And I want to push back on that a little bit. It's not that it means perfection, it means completion. That's when the lunar cycle, the moon goes and finishes its phases until the 7th day, and it's complete. So the whole idea of Genesis and the 7th idea is not about perfection, but it's about completion. And so God completes His creation. That 7th day He rests, and it's complete. So anyway, and another interesting thing. So Genesis is trying to have us to be invited into God's rest. And that comes up a lot. Will we trust God? Will we just put our rest in Him? Will we believe on Him and rest? So did you notice that when I read those verses, like in verse 3 of chapter 1, it was evening and morning the first day? Well, you and I don't start our days with the evening and morning first day. We start in the morning. That's how our day begins. We wake up in the morning, hit that alarm clock, and we get our feet on the floor and start moving. It begins in the morning. But notice in Scripture, the Jewish day begins not in the morning, but in the evening. As the sun sets, that's when your day begins. And so it is actually another invitation for us to rest, because your day is supposed to begin by just trusting God. So it begins with you not able to work. So in the ancient world, when it's dark, that's when that's when you're home. That's when you're resting. That's when you go to sleep. And so your day begins with rest in the evening. It begins with trusting God. And that can put you in a very vulnerable position if your day begins when you sleep in the ancient world, because you're vulnerable. You're just vulnerable then, to whatever happens because you're sleeping. And that is a good practice to know that my day, mentally ends or begins as I rest, because I am surrendering myself to God. And so it's a good practice for us, even as Christians, to as we begin our day in the morning, as the sun comes up, still to practice and take a moment to say, Lord, I want to rest. I want to begin this day trusting you. So those were things. What you'll also want to notice in up to this point in the book of Genesis is that there are certain numbers that keep repeating. I'm not into numerology. That's just, I don't take, numbers are important, but don't go overboard. Put it that way. So the number 7 occurs most often in these passages. And of course, it's going to occur most often because the creation happened in a 7-day cycle, okay? But it's not where the sevens end there. Hebrew scholars have noted this because Hebrew poetry emphasizes things through repetition. So when a number like 7, it continues to repeat, you are to pay attention to that, because 7 is a reminder for us to rest in God, to trust Him. So because of that, there are lots of 7s in these chapters. So let me just point them out to you. You're not going to notice them because you and I aren't fluent in Hebrew, but according to Hebrew scholars, the phrase in Genesis 1:1 is comprised of 7 Hebrew words and 28, which is 7 times 4, letters. The description of the chaotic waters in verse 2 has 14 Hebrew words, which is 7 times 2, and the word Elohim occurs 35 times, 7 times 5, and earth, Eres, 21 times, which is 7 times 3, and verse 1 through 3 that I just read, describing the 7th day, has 35 words, which is 7 times 5, 3 clauses, each with 7 words, with the 7th day in the center of each clause. If that isn't strange enough, 7 is symbolic of completeness, like I had mentioned, and the word for 7 and complete in the Hebrew has the same 3 consonants. But this is just the first creation account. Elsewhere in Genesis, there are 7 pairs of clean animals on the ark. God warns Noah 7 days of the flood. Cain is given a 7-fold punishment. Lamech vows to avenge 70 times 7, and there are 70 nations listed in Genesis chapter 10. The story of Cain and Abel. Abel occurs 7 times. His brother occurs 7 times. Cain's line lasts for 7 generations. And let me tell you, the list of these 7s is just bizarre. It just keeps on going. I can just spend many minutes going through all the 7s, but I'm not. Another poetic thing that we're to pay attention to in Hebrew literature is things that are called chiasms. They are phrases that repeat. So you'll have a phrase or an idea that repeats. So you'll have the phrase here that says this, and another phrase later in the book or the story that says something very similar or the exact same thing. And what it does, it's a mirror. So you're supposed to look at the center, or what's in the center of those 2 phrases or those words that keep repeating. And then you'll notice as you get further into the center, there's another set of repeated phrases or words. And then there's another set of repeated phrases, words within that. And what it's doing is it's pointing you to that very center portion of that piece of literature. And the center portion is to help inform the reader. What I love about Jewish poetry and Jewish literature, it's not just going to give you everything up front. It's going to make you search for it. It's going to make you have to dig to find some really cool treasure. And once you do, you're like, oh, when you find the center, it helps inform the reader of how to view the rest of the storyline. So the center of the chiasm, the primary chiasm in this part of Genesis, is found in between days and 3 and 4. It's not super clear to us because we have an English Bible, but in a Hebrew language, that centerpiece that all these phrases point to a center is the word moad, which is most often translated seasons in your Bible. It's in between day 3 and day 4 of creation. And it also is a word that reflects talking about Sabbath, which again is about rest. So a lot of this is a reminder to us. Listen, as we read these stories in Genesis, will we enter that rest that God has? Will we do the right thing? Will we rule and reign with Him? Not in a bossy way, like I've said earlier. This is a very compassionate way of helping things thrive and grow, being a blessing. And also, will we trust God? Will we just rest and trust in Him? So that is the question that it's trying to encourage us with. Lastly, let me just make a reference to this. Remember, the book of Genesis is the first of the book of Moses that we talked about in lesson 1. So we're also to look at these stories coming in a frame of mind that many of the people that are getting this story for the first time in hundreds of years is the people of Israel in Exodus. They have, for 400 years, they've been in slavery. Many of them are probably illiterate. A lot of the Jewish ancient traditions, well, it's not even Jewish yet. They're not even really a nation per se until they come out of bondage. Of course, we have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob before, and they're 12. But the formation of a nation doesn't really even happen until Exodus chapter 1, when they're in bondage to Egypt. So here they've been slaves all their life. Their parents have been slaves. Their grandparents have been slaves. Their great-grandparents have been slaves. That is all they know for over 400 years in Egypt. And so God brings them out of Egypt. I know it's not Genesis, but I'm getting to it. They leave, and here they're reading Genesis and looking at Genesis and meditating on it for the first time. And now, as slaves, they get a 7th day of rest. Slaves don't get days off. Okay, in the ancient world, you work, and only either the wealthy or the powerful have days off, or even vacations. Even feast days. That the Bible wants Israel to celebrate. So Israel is given a reminder that on the 7th day they are to rest, and that not just only to trust God, but it's a physical rest. Take a break today. You're not a slave anymore, It's a reminder that we cannot be slaves to the things of this world, slaves to the things we possess, slaves to our work. We need to take that day off and no longer be a slave. What's difficult about that is for Israel, and you'll notice it's the same for you and I, we feel that our value is based on what we produce and what we do in a day. If you don't think so, maybe if you've ever went through a time when your health is bad and you're not able to do the things you used to do, you begin to wonder, what the heck? I don't feel valuable like I used to because I'm not getting things done. So God is really challenging Israel in this, because Israel has been a slave, so they know their value based on what they produce. If they've been making bricks, like it talks about in Exodus, then your value is based on how many bricks you produce. You produce 100 bricks a day, you're worth 100 bricks, man. If you produce 1,000 bricks a day, man, you're worth 1,000 bricks. If you don't produce bricks, well, you're not worth anything. And so you have to get to the point where on the seventh day, you realize your value is not based on what you produce, but it's based on who He's told you who you are, which is you are made in the image of God. You're made to rule and to reign and to be His representative on earth. That's where we find our purpose, because sometimes we're not able, you may not produce like you used to produce before, but we need to understand our value isn't based on the bricks that we produce today. It's based on the title that He gives us to be in His image, to represent Him. Doesn't matter what your health is like, we can all represent Him well in kindness and respect and generosity to the best of our ability. So that is lesson 7. So I will keep trying to plug along and get ourselves caught up. But thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next lesson. And I don't have any assignments really. Maybe the rest of chapter 2, read that. I know I keep giving you the same assignment. So I'm telling you, just reread it. You're going to pick up things that you just didn't pick up before. So let me give you a little hints of what to pay attention to. Try to remember or review lesson 2 of what I said other creation accounts were like in the ancient Near East. They have a Babylonian account, an Egyptian account, and they all have different creation stories. Now I want you to compare those to what you're reading in chapter 2. This is another creation account that the writer is going to give you, and there are very big differences that you will notice. Also, I want to see if you will notice any differences from chapter 1. I will get more messy with that in the next lesson, but don't let that freak you out. This is purposely written, inspired by God, and I will help you walk through it as others have helped me walk through it. So it's good stuff. So I'm hoping that you enjoy it too. So yeah, pay attention. Think about, what does this mean with my value compared to those other creation accounts of God's nature, of all of these things, and pay attention. Remember, this is all put in there very purposefully. So pay attention to some things that he's going to mention that is going to come up later in the story as a plot of tension in between different characters that we're going to get more introduced to. All right, hopefully, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to give you anything weird. Okay, so a weird thing that you may not have picked up on. One question that some people have is, well, when were angels created? I believe, of course, they were created before humanity, because the psalmist says, and I don't have the verse with me right now, I'm sorry, but it talks about how the stars and I think even the sons of God maybe shouted for joy at God's creation. So we know that they were there. These are all stars and sons of God are language of these spirit beings, or angels, if you like that term better. And so just to throw out an idea that some commentaries have in verse 1 of chapter 2, says, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. I don't know what else your Bible might say. Mine, I'm reading from the ESV. So it's just as telling us that everything is created, and it says, and all the host. So the word host is a Hebrew word meaning army. And normally when it talks about the hosts, like the Lord of hosts, that means the Lord of this angelic spirit being army. So we're not sure when it happens. We know it's before, but the writer in chapter 2, verse 1 says that they were also created too, when it mentions the host of them. So Um, so yeah. Anyway, something else to chew on. Any comments or questions? Just send them to me. I will. I will. I can neither confirm nor deny that I will have an answer, but it's good to talk about. It's good discussion. So hope you have a good day. I'll check back with you again next time. Thanks.